can we balance common sense police reform without sacrificing public safety in a time when, you know, part of the country is calling to defund the police and actively cheering when they're gunned down in the street, and another part is tired of seeing the lawlessness?
So
good. Only took an hour and 6 minutes.
Named Tim Scott.
I want to drink just in celebration of the fact that Alex P. Keaton was the one person to show up and ask a reasonable question.
Pretty much agreed to. A lot of Democrats agreed to it, but they wouldn't vote for it. And it was a really good. It was a compromise of a lot of different factors. And it didn't get done, and it should have gotten done. And it could still be out there, it could still be resurrected very easily, but they just didn't want to do it. Because I think the Democrats are viewing this as a political issue, and I probably agree with them. I think it's very bad for them, because we're about law and order. We have to be about law and order, otherwise you're going to see your cities burn. And that's the way it is. If we can do a plan like Tim Scott's plan, which is really, it goes far enough, but it doesn't take the dignity away from our police. We have incredible people. They've been protecting us for a long time. I mean, we're here, and I feel very safe being in this room. These are great people. We can't take their dignity away. We have to let them be able to do what they do better than anybody else. So I think we have to look at it that way.
And somebody get that kid some powder.
We have to be very, very careful. Police are so afraid today that they do something slightly wrong, and their pension's gone, their job's gone. Who knows what happens? Their life is ruined. Their wife or their husband will leave. The whole thing, it's a very scary thing to do. And then you look at safety. I mean, you look at that horrible human being that shot these two police, cold blank right next, just a disgusting, and then ran off. You look at that, this is a very tough job, and it's a very unsafe job. It's a very dangerous job. We have to give them back their dignity, and we have to give them back respect. These are great people, for the most part. There's always going to be a bad apple in your business, in my business, no matter what. I mean, there's going to be bad apples, so we have to weed out the
bad apples. In this room,
but we have to give the police back that strength
area
that they had a short
I'm
while
not pointing
ago,
fingers.
and that they have in Republican cities, frankly.
Who in your
states.
business,
But you
George?
take a look. This is a
Getting
Democrat
warmer.
problem.
Hot.
This is largely a Democrat problem. If you just take a look at the list, every Democrat city, almost, not all.
Also,
but
George,
a lot
how do you
of them,
cross your legs
certainly
like
in the
that,
top
like a woman? Don't you have
25,
that
even
does
if you go to the top 50. Almost every city is run by the Democrats. People don't respect our police.
Right. Let me make sure that I actually look at this.
18 of the top 20.
I think I wrote this down beforehand. Okay, hold on. Portland, Oregon. Mayor, Ted Wheeler, Democrat. Governor, Kate Brown, Democrat. Seattle, Washington. Mayor, Jen Durkin, Democrat. Governor, Jay Inslee. I don't know how you pronounce Democrat. Kenosha, Mayor, Democrat. Governor, Democrat. Washington, D.C., Mayor, Democrat. Atlanta, Georgia, Mayor, Democrat. There's Republican Governor Brian Kemp, who sent in the troops to calm the riot down, and then you had the Democratic mayor complain at that point, even though she was calling. Remember when you had Keisha saying, like, you can't be doing this, you have to stop rioting. Yeah. And then when the Republican governor said, all right, we'll send in some troops to stop the rioting, like, how could you do this? It's racist. So every single major city where this has happened, and this is something, again, the reason they want to blame that on the president, there are appropriate things to blame on the president. There are appropriate things that fall under the president's purview. For example, an international peace treaty. Foreign policy is the direct purview of the president. States' rights, for example, state police, how they handle these riots right now, or how they handle COVID, what they do with their lockdowns. States have autonomy. That's why we have a constitution. That's why we have states' rights. In this case, you can see the direct contrast of how leftist cities like Seattle, like Portland, like Kenosha, like areas like Detroit, you can see how they've handled these riots versus non-leftist cities where they have been quelled right away. It's very, very clear. You can't blame President Trump for what happens in Portland if it's not happening in the suburbs of Dallas. You can't blame him for what's happening in Seattle if it's not happening in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You need, if you can see it different across the whole country, that means it's not under his purview. What's not different across the entire country is if our country is at war with another country. What's not different across our entire country is the response as far as the Federal Stockpile and Defense Productions Act to make sure that states have what they need as far as supplies. It's very, very easy to see what falls under the president's purview. is the application of law the same across the country, then it's probably a federal issue. If not, if you go, hold on, there's no rhyme or reason to Portland, Seattle, Atlanta, why do they suck? And these red states with major cities don't have the same problem. Yeah. That's because those rights, that legal authority has been granted autonomously to the states as per our Constitution, which I don't think any of these people understand because they're asking the president, why don't you just force people to wear masks and patches?
Right. Well, I think they're trying to pin everything on Donald Trump. Nobody else has any responsibility. Nancy Pelosi doesn't. No other Democrat does. No Democrat governor does. No Democrat mayor does. It's all Donald Trump's fault. And they have no idea how the system actually works. If you want to see a city burn, if you want to see a city have lawlessness and a state have lawlessness, put Democrats in office who have no balls and will not enforce the law and will not support the police and will not call for National Guard troops when it's needed. There are times when that is the appropriate, proportional response to protect everybody else who's not being an asshole that day. Yeah. And they won't do it.
It took over a month for Biden to say anything. He still hasn't called out Antifa and Black Lives Matter by name, for crying out loud. Well, by the way, has Kamala Harris, do we know, Reg the Bennett, has Kamala Harris condemned this shooting of the, because she went and she visited Jacob Blake, right? Well, what about the shooting of deputies in your own state? Or were you too busy locking up felons and extending their stay beyond when they were supposed to be let free because you wanted free labor for the state of California? Kamala Harris. I don't even trust your black half.
No. And definitely not his black quarter, that's for sure.
And I don't mean that I don't trust her black half. I mean, I don't trust that half is black because you locked up more black people than anyone running in this race as far as directly impacting black people being mass incarcerated. In this race, you have Donald Trump, you have Mike Pence, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. One of these people has had a direct impact, has deliberately, proactively pushed for laws that have mass incarcerated more black people than the other three. Anyone want to guess? It's the one who claims half blackness.
Right. I think she's the Black Plague. She's the real Black Plague.
Well, you know what is the common thread? Like, look, we hear the line.
She's the half black plague.
We need one of those like death doctor masks.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let's head over to San Francisco.
No, this will be fact checked on YouTube. There will be a stat underneath. She is not the black plague.
nor half nor full. She is 1/4. No, look, what is the common thread here? We often are talking about this, and you hear the talking point. The president talked about it. Other folks have talked about it. Why are Democratic cities in this particular problem? It's not just the word policies. It's policies specifically that in every instance choose to not look at putting community first, putting respect for authority first, trying to actually help these communities, but instead they're consistently using policies that weaken people, that cheapen people, that are creating kind of the patriarchy, if you will, of saying you can't do it. Yeah. You need us to do it. Oh, there's nothing else for you to do. Well, you kind of condemned
really
to
are
making it
a lawyer,
happen.
aren't you?
He really
was like, he sounded like Johnny Cochran. We have policies that cheapen people, that weaken people. We are demeaning people.
He did, yeah. I'd vote for him.
What can I say?
You're my lawyer.
It's true. No, the entire thread is cheapening the lives of any person, regardless of their skin color. It just happens to be that the most likely victim of Democratic policies is your black families and your Latino families.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Particularly if they're a black or Latino cop.